Chapter 891. The game was designed for me to show off? Huh? The shop owner is finally doing a live stream. I only watch the shop owner's live stream. Grandpa, your favorite stream is finally back on. People sent all kinds of bullet comments of surprises and cheers onto the screen. Huh? This is good. Sutanji took a peek and saw that Mr. Fang was indeed doing a live stream. Immediately, she turned on QQ live stream and began to watch with great enjoyment. The players of the Kanglan City shop sat together as well. They had finished the previous games of Kratos killing Olympian gods. Hearing that Kratos went to a world called Midgard, they all stopped what they were doing and came to watch the live stream. Not everyone had finished the first 3 games in the God of War series, and not everyone would buy the new God of War 4, but they all wanted to see what sparks this powerful man would make after killing all the Olympian gods. The most important thing was, the shop owner is doing a live stream again. Isn't it nice? In the Kanglan City shop, the elves were thrilled. It's just the shop owner live streaming. As the queen of the elf clan, Kellybull didn't think that the scummy shop owner had any advantages over her. She watched the big screen and mumbled in contempt, "One day, I'll make you guys eager to watch my live stream every day. But now, let's watch the shop owner's live stream first." At this moment, Valkyrie Isabella had been lying in the golden pool for a long time. After slowly opening her eyes, she was greeted by blinding sunshine. She tried to lift her hand to block the sunshine but found my hand? She found her hand was trembling a bit and refusing to move. She tried to move her feet and was horrified to find that, my feet, my body? She suddenly found that her whole body had lost sensation, as if it wasn't her body. Then, she found that her godly soul, which had been damaged by the blade of Olympus, was too weak to move her body. Lying in her birthplace in the godly realm and nurtured by the godly spring, she would need at least thousands of years to regain control of her body. It meant, am paralyzed? How can it be? She almost went crazy when this fact hit her. She wanted to yell but couldn't let out a sound. The undefeatable Valkyrie had been beaten into paralysis by someone in the mortal world. No, I must see what is happening to the bald guy who placed me into such a state. She was so furious that she wanted to find the bald guy. Her godly soul could no longer leave her body, but fortunately, she still had a little godly power left. Therefore, she cast a peeking and eavesdropping spell. Live stream. A pair of invisible eyes followed some elves as the latter entered the shop. Hiss. She saw a large group of people sitting on couches in a circle while messages jumping out on the screen. Her instinct told her that she had discovered a huge secret of the mortal world. This secret seems to involve the background of this god of war. It seemed like they are now in the place named Midgard. She memorized the name of this location and then began to watch the live stream in high spirits while lying in the pool, paralyzed. At this moment, all the players were watching the live stream. On the big screen was the brawny god of war who had a thick beard. Fatigue was obvious in his deep-set eyes. His clothes were worn, and his hands were holding an old axe that looked dirty as if he had just finished some chores. On his belly was the long scar left by the blade of Olympus that once pierced him. This was the current god of war. What difficulty level should I choose? The game even has 4 levels. Mr. Fang was in the last step of choosing the difficulty level. On the live stream, he murmured to himself, "Give me a story, give me a balanced experience, give me a challenge, and the highest difficulty level, give me God of War. There's no need to consider, of course, I'll choose." Immediately, Mr. Fang clicked on the blood-red words "Give me God of War." The shop owner is indeed an excellent player. Elf girl Sarah had a good appetite while she watched the live stream. She immediately ate a spicy stick. What kind of fancy plays will he show us this time? Sutanji sat in the shop and watched it attentively. I'll learn some profound and complex skills from the shop owner to attract my little elves. Elf Queen Kellybull had come to the shop in her free time and was watching it. Engrossed, as an elf queen, she was distressed that no one showed respect to her when she disguised her identity as the queen. At this moment, Kratos suddenly became animated on the screen. People seemed to see the previous god of war in him, but he looked as if he had cut out his past from his life. Like a hunter living in the depths of the mountains, he lifted his axe and hacked at the white birch tree before him strike by strike. He roared as he hacked as if he was using all his strength to cut down the thick white birch. He looked like a hero who had grown old. Watching this scene, the players understood that the powerful Kratos, the god of war, was indeed old now. This was Midgard, one of the 9 realms in Norse mythology. Different from the previous games, at the beginning of God of War 4, Kratos didn't harbor bone-deep hatred due to the betrayal of the gods. Many years after his battles with the Olympian gods, he had come out of the previous nightmarish world and was living a new life with his son. He was no longer alone. The man before the players was no longer the god of war but a father who lived with his son in the snow forest. It was a nice and heartwarming scene. Yeah, did Kratos' new wife die as well? He's cutting wood to cremate her body and bury her. These two guys. The man and the boy don't know how to communicate with each other. Their conversations are so dry. Mr. Fang watched the cinematics and commented, but it's understandable. He had never had a son before, and his daughter died a long time ago. Is he going to teach his son how to hunt? When it came to this part, Mr. Fang was eager to try. I'm good at this. He had been uncertain about the game since the main character was the previous god of war, and there was a new legend. He was afraid there might be some monsters that he couldn't defeat. He was familiar with all the previous games, but the newly released God of War 4 was a game that he had never played before. Hearing that they were going to go hunting, he relaxed a bit. He was surprised that as he taught the son how to hunt, a dragon dashed out from the forest. It's a random enemy, but I can easily handle a group of such low-level drugs. Mr. Fang raised his axe. I think I'm supposed to show off my skills in front of my son. I'll go and have a try. Huh? That's good. The elves said immediately. This difficulty level was obviously acceptable to them. Chapter 892, Wildly Testing on the Verge of Failure. Let's read the story. I guess, Kratos, a powerful father, wants to make sure that his son can pass a future challenge. He will try to protect his son by training him. While he explained, Mr. Fang bent down and moved toward the dragon with the axe in his hand. I think we should teach the son some advanced battle skills even though we're facing the comparatively weak dragon. We can use some advanced battle concepts to nurture this future flower of the godly realm. The shop owner is going to make another kill without receiving any damage. The elves sent bullet comments while they watched the live stream. Hey, the guy who commented earlier, a kill without being injured is not good enough. I'm sure that he will show some new battle skills, the ones with very high difficulty level. Didn't you hear shop owner say that he will teach battle concepts this time? So many people are watching him teach his son. At this moment, the Valkyrie lay in the pool and mumbled, I must know my enemy to defeat him. I'll watch how this guy teaches his son. After studying him thoroughly, I can challenge him again. Then, she remembered that she was paralyzed. While gritting her teeth, she thought, it doesn't matter. After watching him for thousands of years, I'll know everything about him and will surely defeat him. At this thought, she continued to watch with great concentration. She saw a small window at the bottom of the screen, and the weak-looking shop owner would show his face in the window occasionally. She didn't understand what it meant for now, but it didn't affect her from watching the live stream. At this moment, Mr. Fang said, now, I'll show you a very advanced battle concept. It's very useful and can be used in any battle. It's called among the combat techniques in the world, the fastest speed trumps all. He controlled Kratos, the god of war. If I attack fast enough, the enemy's attacks can't hit me. His axe hacked down with great swiftness. But almost at the same time, the dragon launched an extremely swift sword slash. 2 streaks of blood shot up almost at the same time. They both stumbled. Then, the dragon hacked again. With cold sweat on his forehead, Mr. Fang rolled on the ground and narrowly dodged the slash. Do you see what happens when your attacks are not fast enough? The consequences are so severe when this move fails. The elves stared at the screen intently. Is the shop owner going to teach us some super difficult skills? Huh? Didn't the shop owner say he will teach us that among the combat techniques in the world, the fastest speed trumps all? Elf Queen Kellybull stared at the big screen suspiciously. How come he changed his mind at the last second? She seemed to sense something unusual. Standing behind Mr. Fang and watching him play, Nalan Minxu had a sly look in her eyes as she covered her mouth while her shoulders shook uncontrollably. With a dark expression, Mr. Fang thought, how come a small monster in God of War 4 is so difficult to fight? After all, when he played the first 3 games in God of War series, he had killed monsters as if he was cutting grass and killed gods like killing chickens. It had been a very magnificent experience. Although the system version of God of War 4 didn't have specific stats on health, the HP percentage on the bottom of the screen was a good reference. Right now, the HP bar had lost half of the length. In other words, I will be killed by a small monster with 2 to 3 strikes. It must be noted that the game had just begun, and this stage was equivalent to a tutorial. This game is purposefully trying to make me fail. It seems like the God of War is indeed old. He can't even match the speed of a small monster now, Mr. Fang explained as he snuck up with his axe. Let's change strategy and teach the sun. Sir, aren't you going to teach the fastest speed trumps all? Didn't you say that it applies to any battle? I'll teach it later. Glancing at the bullet comment, Mr. Fang's face turned darker as he thought, I didn't know that the God of War is old, and his combat strength dropped so much. I haven't played it before. This is trying to make me look back. Who sent it? Glancing around and not able to find the sender, he finally returned his attention back to the monster before him. I realized that the concept among the combat techniques in the world, the fastest speed trumps all, is too profound and complex for this type of small monsters. Besides, I think our old God of War's son won't understand such profound and complex stuff. Let's start from the simple skills. This skill can be used in any battles too. It's called capitalizing on the enemy's recovery after attacking. Mr. Fang controlled Kratos to move forward a few steps and then sidestepped when he was almost within the Drag's attack range, dodging the latter's attack perfectly. When this attack of his enemy was about to stop, Mr. Fang struck forward with his axe with force. Then, I'll use the wild hacking axe technique, severely injuring the monster. Mr. Fang yelled and brandished his axe as if he had gone mad. The audience watched as Mr. Fang controlled Kratos to send the monster flying with a series of wild strikes. Awesome. But, sir. Puzzled, a few Saint-level masters sent bullet comments. We know this move already. Of course, you know it. Mr. Fang said immediately, Kratos is teaching his son. How can he teach his son the skills that even you guys can't do? Oh. The words sounded weird to their ears. He's right. He's teaching his son. What are you mortals doing here? At this moment, the paralyzed Valkyrie Isabella agreed while lying in the pool. She knew it was easy to make a successful hit at the end of the enemy's attack, but this man's easy and simple explanation made her think higher of him. At least she instantly understood it after the explanation. At this moment, the monster got up from the ground silently. A sharp blade slashed at him from behind. Sir, be careful. The audience had always felt relaxed and cheerful when they watched the shop owner's live stream, but this time, they felt uneasy and fearful. Mr. Fang pretended that he had seen the attack when he didn't. In fact, he dodged it with a flinch of his head in fear, and he shouted, Wild hacking axe technique, wild hacking axe technique, wild. While carefully dodging the attacks, he finally killed the monster with about 20 wild axe strikes. Exhaling in relief, he said to Kratos' son, Atreus, do you understand this, boy? Of course, he understands it, you explained so clearly. Lying in the pool, Valkyrie Isabella mumbled to herself, She continued to watch, wondering if this person would explain some more advanced skills. At this moment, Mr. Fang said smugly, "See, with my method, except for the injuries that I got when I demonstrated the disadvantage of that skill, I received no injuries." Although he had never played this game before, he had years of experience in playing games and fighting battles. "It's a piece of cake for me. To tell you the truth, I didn't use my full strength yet." The moment he said that, Kratos' son, Atreus, pointed behind him and yelled, "Father, there are more." "More? Another drag?" Mr. Fang was delighted inside. "Now, it's time for me to get serious. This time, I'll receive no injuries and thus redeem my reputation." He looked back and saw groups of revenants howling and walking out of the forest. Chapter 893, Sir, didn't you say you'd stop the live stream at noon? I must tell you that I can only live stream until noon. I have things to do this afternoon, Mr. Fang said as he controlled Kratos to dodge attacks. It was indeed dangerous, even the small monsters were so hard to fight, and he wished that he could finish the live stream immediately. It was hard to continue the game, and he had to explain to these people while he played it. Of course, Mr. Fang was a professional and had the basic abilities even though he only live streamed in his free time. He continued to explain, "It seems like Kratos lost his memories and much of his strength. So, we can't expect him to unleash his previous godly power and use his old ultimate moves. There are no moves such as Poseidon's Rage in God of War 4. Obviously, many players were still impressed by the powerful spells shown in the previous God of War games. "Sir, can we use the Blades of Chaos in this game?" The Saint-level players such as Elf Queen Kellybull still had fresh memories of the main weapons in the God of War trilogy. Some warriors and knights even created mimics of the two chain blades in real life. The Saint-level players were very proficient with these weapons. Missing the Blades of Chaos from the previous games, more people sent bullet comments, asking the same question. Mr. Fang explained as he battled the monster, "I don't think so. After all, the chain blades came from Ares, the previous god of war. They had been burning Kratos and represented the slavery and bondage under the Olympian gods. I think it's time for him to say farewell to his past." "Sir, you don't know it either? You sound so uncertain," Sutanji asked immediately. In the past, the shop owner knew everything about the games and had been just reluctant to tell them. However, this time, he sounded very uncertain. Of course, Mr. Fang couldn't tell them that he had played all the previous games but had only watched this game's trailer. Now playing this damn God of War 4 on live stream, he felt as if he was walking on thin ice, almost failing before he could get out of the tutorial. He seemed to have sensed a malicious intent in this game. He even suspected that he had played the fake God of War games before. Compared with the 3 previous games, God of War 4 had a totally different gaming experience. "Father, behind you." Another Draga got up from the ground and hacked at him with great speed. Dodge. Fang Chi kept his vital body parts safe at the last moment as the rusty blade left a shallow bloodline on his body. "There are too many of them, and I'd better get out of the siege and throw the axe at them." In God of War 4, Kratos could throw his axe and summon it back at will. But Fang Chi obviously didn't find it easy since he had to divert some of his attention to do explanations while battling. Ouch. Everyone saw Mr. Fang receiving several wounds in this messy group battle, and his HP bar was almost at the bottom left. Although Atreus couldn't enter the fray, he had been warning Kratos of the dangers coming from the blind spots. The moment that Fang Chi retreated, several Draga followed him. Having fought for a long while with the Draga, Fang Chi found that they were not fragile skeletons. Their forms and combat techniques showed that they had experienced countless battles before they died. Even now, they maintained a good level of combat strength. Comparatively, they were more like corpse ghosts. So many. If he was playing God of War 1, a Poseidon's Rage would clear them all. Even if he couldn't cast Poseidon's Rage at the beginning of the game, he could knock down a group of them with chain blades. But now, the old god of war couldn't kill one small monster without being hit. Clearly, he couldn't stay unrivaled. I feel like I'm going to fail. Mr. Fang's heart sank. At this moment, all the players had their hearts in their throats as they watched the live stream. How can it be? It feels like the shop owner is at a disadvantage fighting the small monsters. What's happening? Not only the players in the new shops, but the veteran players were stupefied by the scene. What's wrong with today's live stream? Sutanji said, it seems like the shop owner is not himself today. Huh? In the heavenly realm, Valkyrie Isabella watched the scene in puzzlement. When Atreus warned Kratos of the left side, Fang Chi turned his head and felt a gust of wind sweeping at his face. Subconsciously, he blocked the attack with his left arm. With a crisp metal colliding noise, a round shield suddenly sprung out from his gauntlet. Fang Chi had expected his left arm to be wounded with this block, but the round shield blocked this attack. Holding the Leviathan axe in his right hand, Kratos had a strange gauntlet on his left arm, different from most other gauntlets. It concealed extremely hard fan blades that were unnoticeable but could form a middle-sized round shield when they spread out. However, he was still caught off guard, and he was forced to take 2 steps back by the huge force from the strike. At this moment, several Draugr took the opportunity to charge at him. He's in danger. The viewers in the shops yelled in low voices. He doesn't know how to use this weapon? Valkyrie Isabella squinted her eyes and seemed to see the problem. What's wrong? It seems like he's even weaker than me. If it was her, even if she didn't have enough strength, she could kill these Draugr at the price of a few wounds. I have a shield on this arm. At this moment, Fang Chi blocked again with the shield on his left arm subconsciously. Ting, the block was done in a hurry. Even if he successfully blocked the attack, he would fall and be surrounded by his enemies. But everyone saw that Fang Chi's shield had a subtle force that deflected the attack force perfectly. The shield even pushed back, forcing the 2 monsters to lose balance and lean back. It was a hasty move, but it bounced back the attacks so smoothly. At this moment, Valkyrie Isabella in the distant heavenly realms stared at the screen of the live stream intently. What combat technique is this? Obviously, she realized that this wasn't a force or a magic spell but a powerful combat technique. Parry? Everyone stared at the sight with widened eyes. He even used parry in God of War. Immediately, Fang Chi controlled Kratos to throw out his axe, sending a monster flying with one strike. With good control of his force, he could strike several times with his axe when the enemies were in midair before, but this time, due to the hasty parry, he sent the Draugr too far away for him to continue the attack. Without thinking, he threw out the Leviathan axe and then slashed his shield at another Draugr's head. At this moment, bullet comments flooded the screen. Amazing. Look at that monster. Parry with heavy strike and flying axe. He pinned a monster onto the mountain wall with instant kill. Awesome. FCK, awesome play. What? Valkyrie Isabella watched the live stream in a daze, stunned by the sight of the corpse being pinned to the mountainside. She had sensed how thick-skinned the monster was, but now, it felt as if a different player was playing the game. This game was different from the previous games in God of War series. Previously, Kratos, the God of War, had advanced with great fortitude and godly power, but now, his strength was much weaker than before. In the current situation, it was impossible to sweep across the battlefield with magic spells or powerful strength. Different from the previous games which featured on the mastery of strength, the system version of God of War 4 focused on combat techniques. After fighting for most of his life, the old God of War had a lot of battle experience. I seem to have some ideas about how to play the game. Suddenly, understanding dawned on Mr. Fang. Combining his previous battle method and the new combat techniques, he seemed to create a completely new battle system. Ting, with a loud vibration noise, Fang Chi found the perfect angle and used one Draugr to block the other Draugr who were attacking from the sides. creating a temporary 1 versus 1 situation. Meanwhile, the shield on his left arm moved nimbly and blocked the monster's sword before slanting and striking forward sideways. Then, he struck down his heavy axe, sending the monster flying. Immediately, he threw out the Leviathan axe. These moves finished in one breath with great smoothness. I know how to play this game. Sir, didn't you say you'd stop the live stream at noon? Someone asks in the bullet comment. Huh? What did you say? Mr. Fang tried to pin monsters to walls several times but failed. Then, he turned back to find small monster to practice the pinning technique. Hiss. This monster is so big, can it be pinned onto the wall? Ah! A scream sounded. Huh. The viewers exchanged a look. Chapter 894. The ultimate duel of power and technique at the top level in the mythological world. Today, I'll teach you the new parry skill and how to kill small monsters quickly. Mr. Fang had almost failed despite his best efforts, so he had to talk and explain his way out of embarrassing situations. But now, he regained his confidence. The legendary Leviathan axe was forged by the famous Hulra brothers, Sindri, and Brock, who were dwarfs and weapon masters in Norse mythology. Unsatisfied with the unwise use of the weapons and godly artifacts that they had created for the Eza god clan, which included figures such as Odin and Thor in Norse mythology, the two weapon masters decided to make the Leviathan ace to balance the powers in the world of the Norse mythology. Obviously, the Leviathan axe wasn't an ordinary battle axe, and it had its own unique way of being used and combat techniques. If the players could use it well, they would learn many advanced combat techniques from it and use much more power than the people who did nothing but slash and hack with it. The players in the East Continent and the continent of Immortal Relic had learned how to control their weapons from the Legend of Sword and Fairy and the Wind and Cloud. However, the players in the West Continent found it difficult to control their swords since their weapons were mostly heavy and big, and it was hard to change their long-standing habits. But now, from God of War, they discovered a whole set of skills from parry to ranged and melee attacks. I never knew these moves. Valkyrie Isabella lay in the pool and did the moves in her mind. Parry, flying Leviathan axe. Hee. In a few thousand years, I will learn all this stuff, and my power will improve greatly. This so-called live stream is indeed enjoyable. Of course, she could do nothing but watch the live stream right now. After they returned from hunting, they entered the main storyline of God of War 4. The story of God of War 4 revolved around the Ragnarok in Norse mythology. At this time, the Norse world was in chaos as Ragnarok was coming, everything was desolate. Strange phenomena appeared in the 9 realms, and more creatures were turned into things like zombies by erosion. Powerful god tribes remained safe but obviously had sensed the bad signs. Hearing the word Ragnarok, people would think of the Olympian gods who were all wiped out and wonder if the bald man would kill the Norse gods during Ragnarok. But obviously, it was not possible. TL note, Ragnarok's Chinese translation means the dusk of gods. After his failed suicide attempt, Kratos drifted to Midgard and became a hermit. He married a woman and had a son. The last wish of his wife before she died was for her ashes to be spread at the highest peak of the 9 realms. In God of War 4, the players found that Kratos had withdrawn the fierceness from his eyes and had learned to control his emotions. Right now, Kratos was only a husband who wanted to fulfill his wife's last wish and a father who protected his son as the latter grew. He was no longer the God of War who had killed all the gods of the Greek pantheon. However, things didn't go as Kratos wished. As they returned to their home, Fang-Chi and the viewers heard booming noises like muffled thunder and then a series of heavy knocking on the door. With an ominous feeling, Kratos immediately motioned for his son to hide. Then, he opened the door and saw a stranger who was as thin as a rod and covered in tattoos of Norse runes. The runes looked like those worshipped as gods by primitive people in the ancient times. They seemed to contain endless power and extremely mysterious laws of nature. Obviously, Kratos didn't know him. But the visitor sounded provocative. You do not want this fight, Kratos said coldly with threatening eyes. But the stranger ignored it and said with even more provocation, "Oh, I'm pretty sure I do." Then, he punched Kratos in the face. FCK, my goodness, this guy is so bold. The viewers froze in shock. After all, even the Olympian gods didn't dare to fight Kratos head-on, but this person looked as if he wanted Kratos to kill him. If it was in the past, Kratos would have attacked him, but at this moment, Kratos suppressed his fury and said, "Leave my home. You are going to have to kill me for that to happen." The stranger threw 3 punches at Kratos' face. Not able to endure any longer, Kratos knocked the stranger to the ground with a punch. He was about to punch again when the stranger got up and hook punched Kratos' chin, sending the latter flying for over 30 meters. How incredibly disappointing. The man stretched his neck and remained intact after receiving a heavy punch from Kratos, and he said, "Come on then." This guy. The Saint-level masters, as well as the elves and knights who had played the God of War trilogy, stared at the scene with widened eyes. This guy dares to taunt Kratos like this? Who is this guy? At this moment, the Valkyrie who was sitting in the pool also froze at the scene. After all, she had first-hand experience of Kratos' great power, otherwise, she wouldn't be lying here. Even though Kratos' strength was much weaker than before, he was still an extremely powerful master. It was obvious that his combat techniques were even better than before. But this stranger wasn't beaten to death after taunting Kratos like this. Besides, he even looked as if he had no interest to block Kratos' strikes with the Leviathan axe. This guy looks very powerful, totally different from the small monsters before now. Mr. Fang said as he controlled Kratos to attack, but it's simple to fight him while he taunts me and doesn't care to dodge. I wonder how berserk he will get later. But we must be aware of his potential sudden attacks. The moment Mr. Fang said that, his opponent punched abruptly. Subconsciously, Fang Chi lifted the shield, parry. As everyone knew, ever since Dark Souls, almost all opponents couldn't block the sudden repulsive force from being parried, and they would be shocked into numbness by it. But this guy used the force from the parry to float back as lightly as a leaf in wind. While turning in midair, he deflected all the forces perfectly with spinning. Swiftly, he punched again as if he just teleported. He deflected it. Everyone including Valkyrie looked at the scene in astonishment. After all, the parry was very difficult to use, and the parry in the system version of the games was launched in a very ingenious way, which made it almost impossible to counter. But the parry which is supposed to be impossible to deflect got deflected with ease. Valkyrie Isabella screamed silently because Kratos didn't even use this complex skill in the battle with her. Mr. Fang practiced it the whole morning on the live stream and was more familiar with this game now. Almost at the same time when his opponent attacked, he thrust out his shield at an angle, parry. This time, his opponent couldn't deflect it with ease and was sent flying backward by the shield, knocking down 2 white birch trees as he flew. In the very second when he lost his balance, Fang Chi took the chance and controlled Kratos to throw out the fatal flying Leviathan axe. Boom, boom, boom. The godly weapon, Leviathan axe, couldn't hack open the stranger's body, but the whole mountain was shattered by this crash. However, in the next moment, a figure shot out like a cannonball and threw another punch. Parry. When his opponent struck onto the thick shield, Fang Chi felt the shield sink a little as the runes on his opponent's body lit up in bright blue lights. The huge godly force wasn't parried. Instead, the parry was suppressed by the great force in the fist. At this moment, everyone was enthralled by this battle as they watched it without blinking, finally understanding that the difficulty level "Give me God of War" meant your enemies were all as powerful as the God of War. The ultimate duel of power and technique between 2 figures who stood at the top level in the mythological world was about to happen. Chapter 895, Learning New Godly Technique from Mr. Fang, Strong Locking Man. Higher. After a series of heavy punches, the stranger picked up Kratos by his legs and swung him out. No one had seen Kratos be beaten so harshly. The stranger even pushed Kratos into the house and crashed into it. Why are the two beds in there? The stranger's mocking tone turned cold as if he had found a clue about the things that he had been looking for. Kratos seems to be protecting his son. Fang Chi had felt that Kratos was too weak for this powerful enemy, but at this moment, he felt a force erupting from the depths of his body. I'll kill the guy first. Fang Chi had no time to talk during the battle. While turning, he used the momentum to knock his opponent to the ground and then smashed him down from the second floor with a double heavy punch. But his enemy got up from the ground faster than Kratos. The stranger grabbed Kratos and body slammed him before kicking him out for dozens of meters like a ball, knocking down countless trees and even half of the mountain. It must be noted that this was a mountain in the mythical world, and gods lived on it. It wasn't as fragile as the mountains in the later ages. FCK. At this moment, even Mr. Fang felt dizzy as he got hit. Most importantly, this was a fixed plot event, which meant that Kratos being kicked away for dozens of meters wasn't a part of his gameplay. Slow and old, you should never have come to Midgard. After the kick, the stranger taunted Kratos. You won't talk, fine. Maybe whoever it is you've got stashed in that house will. Most importantly, the stranger had received few injuries, and they had all healed by now. How come this guy is so strong? It's blatant provocation. Street Wilson and the other Saint-level masters murmured. It's horrifying. It's our first time seeing Kratos getting beat, Kelly Bull gasped. Is this the plane of ninefold darkness? How come these guys are more powerful than the one before? Valkyrie Isabella wondered where Midgard, perhaps. She had the feeling that Midgard wasn't in the plane of ninefold darkness or even in this world at all. Suddenly, she wondered if she should learn from the Norse. Instantly, she liked this thought a lot since people in this place could even beat Kratos who had defeated her. When I recover, I'll change my name to #1 Valkyrie of the Norse. This Norse mythology is indeed powerful. I'm afraid that he is the first challenger who punched Kratos' face into a bloody mess instead of being killed by him, Mr. Fang said. More importantly, the stranger was so reckless that he even threatened Kratos with the latter's son as if he wished that Kratos could kill him. I feel like the rage in Kratos' body is about to bust. Here's Spartan rage. Hellish blazing flames burned around Kratos. The battle in the mountains was lightning fast. The challenger was swift, but Kratos was even faster. The battle axe wasn't Fang Chi's strong suit, but he excelled in fist techniques. When the rage dispersed, Kratos had healed all his injuries. After a series of vicious punches, he picked up a small hill and smashed it down toward his opponent. Boom! The moment it crashed down, the mountain cracked, and the forest was turned into a valley. The viewers seemed to be watching God of War 4, the movie. It was fascinating and stunning. I'm watching a mythical anime on the big screen. Song Kingfing, who usually watched Naruto and Re-Zero, starting life from another world on his communication Jade, sent a bullet comment. Yes, it's a half-year-long anime show. Obviously, many people in the show watched anime. It seems like the shop owner can't finish the battle in half a year. He might not be able to finish it in his lifetime. At this moment, exclamations rose in the shop as the ground shook, and the hill suppressing the stranger slowly rose. Then, the stranger lifted the huge hill-like boulder and threw it out with force. The shield sprung out from Fang Chi's arm. Activate. An exquisite shock force on the shield combined with an aggressive force. The viewers watched as Kratos lifted his shield and shattered the hill-like huge boulder. He's still alive? Mr. Fang was stunned as well. After all, it was the beginning of the game. Kratos had battled with this boss for almost 2 hours. This son of a BTCH is as hard to battle as that silly bird Valkyrie? Mr. Fang was stupefied. Yeah, he mentioned me. Watching the live stream in the pool, Valkyrie Isabella was excited when she heard her title, but then her face darkened as she understood his words. Who is a silly bird? Should I get the Blade of Olympus to kill this guy? A killing demanded by the plot. Of course, Mr. Fang didn't know that even the blade of Olympus would afflict 0 damage on this stranger. How can he kill this guy? The viewers couldn't help but worry for Kratos. So strong. Kratos had killed many gods on Mount Olympus, but in this game, he encountered such a horrifying opponent even before he could walk out of his door. But I feel like he hasn't grown much stronger. Fang Chi controlled Kratos and said, "Let's give him another combo. Parry." Mr. Fang said as he controlled Kratos, "His attacks are not hard to handle, but his punches are extremely fast, so we must have quick reflexes to parry, but I've gradually gotten used to his speed. When I get proficient with the axe, you can't get up again." Fang Chi became even more skillful with the battle axe. Heavy strike. Ducked it. Almost like a reflex, Fang Chi launched a parry. Then, the battle axe hacked down viciously. On the screen, Kratos picked up his enemy by the legs and swung him out. Then, he locked his arms around the enemy's throat and pressed the latter down to the ground. He lay down as well and tightly squeezed his thick arms around his opponent's neck from behind. Regardless of how this stranger struggled, he couldn't get up. At last, Kratos twisted the elbow of his left arm with force. Crack! The whole world turned quiet. The viewers could only hear the whistling of the north winds and Kratos' heavy panting. At this moment, is he really dead? The audience felt suspicious. After all, the stranger had remained alive after being smashed so viciously. Nonsense. This guy is indeed strong, but I killed him with strong locking man. Mr. Fang got up, panting breathlessly. He's definitely dead. TL note, strong locking man is a meme in China where a guy wraps his arm around another guy. Strong locking man? Is this the new skill to kill gods? The elves stared at the screen with widened eyes. This powerful stranger must be a god. This so-called strong locking man even took the life of this unkillable god. What new combat technique is this? Seeing the new skill, Valkyrie Isabella was surprised. Is there a way to kill enemies who are unkillable with only techniques? There is such a powerful technique? She continued to watch intently and simulated the move in her mind. It seems like holding the enemy and body slamming him to the ground before holding him from behind. And strong locking man. This god-killing technique looks easy to use. She could only watch the parry but couldn't practice it, which made it difficult for her to learn it, but this one. Her eyes lit up as she realized that she could learn this. Chapter 896, The God of War and His Illiterate and Humiliating Old Father Who Has No Sense of Direction? But, what miraculous skill is involved in this strong locking man? How can it kill gods? Valkyrie Isabella stared at the scene suspiciously, feeling like something wasn't right. The strange god didn't get up again from the valley after dying. Even if he wasn't dead, he was severely wounded by this combat technique. As Valkyrie Isabella mused over this, Kratos in the game walked back exhausted with blood all over him. He even dropped to the snow on the ground due to exhaustion. Only after a long time did his injuries healed. Obviously, they couldn't stay here anymore. Following his wife's last wish, Kratos took his son and his wife's ashes, embarking on the journey to the highest peak of the 9 realms. He probably knew what dangers were hiding on the journey. They might be related to an ancient prophecy, and his son might not be ready to face the era mentioned in the prophecy. However, they must embark on the journey since that strange god might resurrect at any moment. Walking out of the house, they saw that the terrain around them had experienced great changes due to the battle. The forest had turned into a valley, and mountains were raised to the ground. In the distance were endless rolling mountains with white snow on the peaks and huge forests at the foot. No one knew how many miraculous creatures of the mythological era were hiding in there or how many top-tier gods lived in the mountains. Their destination was the grandest and highest mountain peak in the mythological era in the farthest part of this mountain range. The journey wouldn't be easy, just the Draugr hiding in the forest were hard to handle, let alone other things. In this era, everything except the powerful gods had turned into such monsters. Of course, There were benefits in such a situation. When the countless creatures in this corrupted world were turned into Drag, their fortunes had become ownerless. In this world of the mythological era, there were many awe-inspiring powerful objects. At this moment, Mr. Fang controlled Kratos to dig out a simple-looking rune from a broken chest in the roadside ruins. The players had witnessed the power of rune words in Diablo 2. In God of War 4, there were also rune stones with ancient runes engraved on them. But different from Diablo 2, this rune stone looked simpler and more ancient. According to legends, these letters were the runes created by the Allfather Odin in Norse mythology. They represented the laws of nature of the ancient times, and each letter contained magic power. With good combinations, they could produce miracles. It was probably the original form of magic spells. With this rune attached to the axe, it can unleash magic power. Mr. Fang immediately picked up the battle axe and tried it on. When he lifted his battle axe, a powerful magic force swept around instantly. Wow! The mages and alchemists stared at this scene with widened eyes. This simple letter has such a great power. Besides, the rune had its own power and didn't consume magic energy. Father, here, the mountain is over there, let's go. As time went on, Mr. Fang practiced his combat techniques and explained them to the viewers on the live stream. Although it was the highest difficulty level, he managed it. Thank God that I didn't fail. Mr. Fang wiped the non-existent sweat from his face and walked toward the direction Atreus pointed. This is good. It seems like our son is our guide. We don't have to consult maps in the game. Mr. Fang immediately controlled Kratos to follow his son, Atreus. Hiss. The creators of the game are very nice. Despite the malice that he had felt during the previous battle with the monsters, Mr. Fang now sensed the warmth and consideration of the creators of the game, which was different from the lousy games that were full of schemes and didn't even provide a map. This game is totally different from the previous ones. Ha ha. By now, Mr. Fang had returned from hunting with Atreus. In God of War 4, Kratos didn't have godly power, but he had a son who knew the way and warned him of monsters behind him. Kratos could even order his son to join the fight by launching ranged attacks with arrows. Despite the powerful monsters which had tortured Mr. Fang and almost defeated him at the beginning of the game, the gaming experience right now was much better. As they walked through the broken cliffs in the mountains, they could see the ruins of this era everywhere. Countless monsters and Drag collapsed godly palaces, strange wild beasts that they had never seen before. And stone tablets with runes were scattered across the environment. Sir, there are many runes. Can we take them? Having seen the great power of the rune, Salah and the other elves were excited at the sight of so many runes here. It can't be so easy. Beside them, Street Hematon and the others dampened their enthusiasm coldly. I feel like these runes are trying to tell us something. Walking to the huge stone tablet, Mr. Fang looked at the words that were emitting faint magic energy. Then, do you understand the message on it? Many people asked with bullet comments. Mr. Fang's face darkened, thinking, how could I know? But this game had a weird design. Do I need to learn the ancient runes to play this game? What's wrong with the creators of the God of War 4? Controlling Kratos, Mr. Fang was frustrated when he saw this. Then, Kratos' son, Atreus, walked up and said, this seems to be a market where the giants trade goods with the gods. I wonder if Odin has been here or not. Yeah, this game. Mr. Fang sighed with appreciation. It's wonderful to have a son. First Elder Hyrule, who had played God of War series for a long time, also said, it's so much more convenient to have a son. I think we can play it later. Elf girl Salah said in pleasant surprise. As a group of clumsy players who enjoyed scenery a lot more, they had been tortured in the game since they always got lost and didn't know how to solve the riddles, thus having a very negative gaming experience. It would be wonderful for them to have a son to help them fight, solve riddles, and find the way. I can do this on live stream. Sutanji said in pleasant surprise. After all, These were Great Elder Sue's weak points while she did her live stream. After Mr. Fang got off the live stream, Salah and the other elves, the saint-level masters, knights, and assassins all bought this game and began to play. Watch my live stream, watch me. When Mr. Fang returned to the shop in the evening, he saw Su Tanji doing a live stream, in high spirits. She even invited people like Mr. Fang, Nalan Mink Su, Song Kingfeng, and Xiaoyu to watch it. Obviously, with the guidance of Kratos' son, Atreus, she found that God of War 4 was super easy to play. Due to the recent popularity of God of War 4, even Salah and some other players in Kanglan City shop were watching Su Tanji's live stream. This streamer is super fun, let's watch her live stream. Salah immediately sent a bullet comment. At this moment, inside Su Tanji's live stream room. Boy, what do these words mean? Boy, which way shall we go now? Boy, hit that monster. Isn't it awesome? She played it smoothly, the God of War and the son who is about to inherit everything. Huh. Mr. Fang was stupefied by the scene, and so were the audience in the live stream room. However, when they hunted after a prey, Kratos and his son got separated. The live stream room fell silent. After a long while dash. Boy, where are you? Your father is lost. Boy, father doesn't know the words and doesn't understand the road signs. Boy, father is no match for this monster. Come and help me. Mr. Fang's face darkened as he watched. It seems like you are playing the game called the God of War and his illiterate and humiliating old father who has no sense of direction. Hey. Su Tanji put down her virtual reality headset and glared at Mr. Fang who was watching her play from behind. She was furious. Chapter 897. Two realms are watching in secret, taking the ultimate treasure by force. Meanwhile, in the innumerable immortal sea dash. In the vast ocean in innumerable immortal sea, huge waves surged up on the peaceful surface with howling gusts. Dark clouds covered the sky as hidden currents surged in the depths of the ocean. Countless tiny cracks were vaguely visible as thunderbolts from the void left horrifying cracks in the great ocean. A huge vortex suddenly appeared in the ocean. The vortex grew larger, surging up higher and higher waves. The great disturbance alerted Green Sky Immortal, the heavenly supervisor of the innumerable immortal sea. Sitting opposite to her was a weird-looking Taoist who was dressed in a black and white Taoist robe and had two braids dangling from the two sides of his face. A small stove sat between them with immortal tea simmering in the high-quality star sand pot. Suddenly, the blue-robed woman's eyes turned as cold as ice in the prehistoric times. She looked into the distance. At this moment, the vast ocean calmed down as if the great disturbance had never happened. But, splash, hualala. With the splashing sounds of water, several heads poked out from the bright blue clear ocean. A blind man who had his eyes covered said in astonishment, "Is this the world of the Grand Masters?" They had never seen a world so vast and with such abundant spiritual energy. Don't stall, old ghost Zong. Let's hurry up and get to the shore. Some of them wore clothes of the East continent while some were dressed in the style of the continent of immortal relics. Without exception, they were all draped in weird-looking protection spiritual treasures which looked like bamboo coats with a few snow-white feathers. The feathers emitted holy presence which seemed to come from an ancient god. It was these feathers that helped them remain intact as they traveled through the void where endless thunderbolts struck at everything within. Let's go, find a place to absorb some spiritual energy. This is immortal spiritual energy. At this moment, Valkyrie Isabella lay in the pool and mused. When I recover thousands of years later, the first thing that I'll do is take back my wings. I can't leave them in the mortal world. But now, I'll own you mortals borrow them for thousands of years. After all, she couldn't move right now. At this moment, a secret report was sent from the lower region to the Gui family in the innumerable immortal sea. No one knew about it. In the secret palace, there was a bright mirror hovering in the air. A vague shadow appeared in the mirror, but the vague outer shape of the figure seemed to reveal an extremely solemn-looking ultimate existence. The figure was silent as if he was waiting for the people's reply. The many immortals in the palace, including Wondrous Spell High Holiness, all knelt before the mirror. No one could imagine such a scene. No one could imagine what kind of existence would have the power to place these lofty and extraordinary immortals into submission. How does it go? Silence. After a long while, the voice sounded. Martial arts ban, monitoring the mortal world, and sealing the path to heaven. After so many years, you have received no information at all? A streak of chilly light shot out from the mirror as the voice said coldly. Don't worry, Wondrous Spell High Holiness answered with great respect. We're not so useless like the god's palace that got their home base in the mortal world destroyed. With an extremely reverent expression on his face, he didn't even dare to lift his head. Even with his lofty position, he didn't dare to show a tiny trace of disrespect. Then, he looked at the 30-year-old looking young man beside him. Li Feng, were they exposed? The young man immediately replied, the lower region has many people. I picked several ordinary-looking subordinates, and I'm sure that they won't cause suspicion. According to my investigation, the shop might be related to the item that you're looking for, the young man said cautiously with his head almost lowered to the ground. Might be. The voice in the mirror suddenly turned cold. Everyone felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. No. It must be. The young man added in a hurry, I went there and investigated for a long time in secret. I'm sure that the figures behind them are not demonic gods from the plane of ninefold darkness. Quickly, he organized the words in his mind before saying, I searched those people's souls. They all think that there are one or more masters or even gods guarding the shop. But according to my analysis, it's not the case. I even suspect that there's no one guarding the shop. It's just a trick that the young man named Fang Chi used to fool others. He said, it's said that he rarely came out the shop from the very beginning. Also, no one has seen the senior who is supposed to guard the shop showing his power in any situation outside the shop. Besides, he always shows his power at the last moment, if he indeed has a tremendous force at his back. For example, the plane of ninefold darkness, they could have killed all troublemakers directly. Why did he go to such trouble then? The young man analyzed. The only explanation is that he isn't as powerful as he looks. He is borrowing those powers and thus can't make them last, which is why he always waits until the last moment to make a move. Otherwise, people would have seen through his tricks. State your conclusion. The voice in the mirror seemed to soften a bit but was still a little impatient. Yes. The young man said, according to my analysis, this human has an extremely powerful supreme treasure, even if it's not the item that you need. The two are closely related. As for the inconsistency of timing, I think the ultimate treasure has its own spirit and came out earlier. He concluded. Besides, I think that its amazing powers will even intrigue you. I'm sure even if it's not the item that you are looking for, it's not inferior to any ultimate holy items in Legends. The moment he said the words, he was sent flying without a warning, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. A mere minor immortal doesn't deserve to use the words ultimate holy. The light on the mirror dimmed as a faint voice sounded. If so, you go and take the so-called ultimate holy item by force, so it won't be wasted in the mortal world. At this moment, in the depths of the ninefold darkness, in the dark abyss at the depths of the darkness, there were countless prehistoric corpses. The figures wore ancient immortal robes or eroded heavy armor. They knelt with heads lowered like the last members of ancient families, in the depths of the direction that they were kneeling at. The most ancient king of this dark world hid there. It seemed like a pair of eyes slowly opened at the bottom of the abyss. The powerful light could no longer be covered. How could an ultimate holy item fall in such a place? The two realms shook. Greedy gazes turned toward the mortal world which was stuck in the middle of the two realms and shivering at the moment. Chapter 898. The next TV series is Investiture of the Gods. Lately, due to the continual popularity of God of War 4, the revenue of the shops rose sharply and drove the sales of the previous God of War games to another peak. In fact, the price of the first God of War trilogy was quite high for most of the players, who had low cultivation strength. God of War 4 cost 318 crystals or magic crystals. Many players found the previous trilogy quite difficult to play with all the riddle-solving and god-killing quests. The players with low cultivation strength couldn't understand these godly-level magic spells and only used them to familiarize themselves with battles, which was why the sales hadn't been high, and many players only watched the live streams. However, God of War 4 was different. Many players found that the game wasn't so difficult with Atreus' help. Besides, this game featured the use of combat techniques, which were very beneficial to all players. Furthermore, Mr. Fang's live stream and others' live streams, such as major streamer Sutanji's live stream, had great promotional effects. Even Valkyrie Isabella loved watching Elder Sue's live stream and enjoyed it very much. Let's buy the game too. Elf Girl Sally urged her companions in the shop. Even this streamer can play well in the game, I think we can do it, too. So, even the elf girls with poor skills bought the game, let alone others. Mr. Fang glanced at the task of earning crystals and found that its progress had reached 61%, which was quite impressive. Meanwhile, Mr. Fang began to investigate sites for new branch shops and opened them one by one. For example, a new shop was opened in the area of Phoenix Crime Mountain, which was north to Jua City and south to the three saint factions in the continent of immortal relics. The Orc Kingdom and Lianshan Principality got their wishes and had branch shops in their nations, including the new shops in Xiao Cave Abode at the East Continent and the territory of the Demon Clan at the continent of Immortal Relic. There were altogether 5 branch shops in the first group. There were fewer computers in the new shops than in the old ones, but they diverted many players from the bursting old shops. Soon, Mr. Fang planned to open the next batch of branch shops. Obviously, as the shops expanded, they no longer nestled in one remote corner or need any promotion in the mortal world. However, it also caused some problems. He grew from an unknown common mortal into an ultimate master with the power to kill immortals and gods. From a distant place beyond the heaven, a pair of eyes which seemed to be able to see through the plane of ninefold darkness slightly squinted as they coldly stared at the mortal world. Such effects are quite interesting, very interesting. Then, a deep and cold gaze turned from the depths of the ninefold darkness to the mortal world. It's a real waste to allow this item to fall into the hands of the mortals. What if they don't give it up? God's palace, innumerable immortal sea, immortals and gods in heaven, all the evil demons in all abysses at the ninefold darkness. The two pairs of eyes looked down at the mortal world at the same time with the arrogance of rulers who dominated over 3 realms and 6 destinies. It's not their decision to make. The moment that their gazes turned to the mortal world, the heaven and earth darkened. The sky. How come the sky turned dark? Countless mortals looked up at the sky in horror, they screamed and howled in panic, and some even knelt on the ground to pray. The precious stone lands its innocent possessor in jail. They would probably be implicated in the biggest catastrophe in history. In the Kanglan City shop a prompt appeared on the system interface. The system's upgrade progress reached 80%, and the newest system information had been updated. Newest system information? Fang Chi immediately turned on the system interface to take a look. For the last task, the reward of mysterious gift bag of a mythological TV series that had 3 question marks on it had changed into a row of big characters with shiny golden lights. Investiture of the Gods. TL note, Investiture of the Gods or The Creation of the Gods is a 16th century Chinese novel and one of the major vernacular Chinese works in the gods and demons genre, and it was later turned into a series of movies and TV shows. Below it was a line of words: when the task is 50% completed, the host will obtain the right to reveal the mysterious reward. The trailer of Investiture of the Gods. At this moment, Mr. Fang had a bowl of instant noodles in his hands. He had just turned off the live stream and ended today's stream of God of War 4 when he saw these words. He almost choked on the noodles. He glanced at the elves who were screaming in elation after killing a stone ancient in the beginning of God of War 4, the cowardly dragon who kept screaming at every turn and twist, and system. It seems like you want to scare my idle customers to death, right, sir? What are you mumbling about? At this moment, Salah looked over. Oh, I said that the shop will release the trailer of the new TV series today. New TV series? Salah said in surprise. By now, Journey to the West had almost reached the end of the 40-plus episodes with only a few of the 81 ordeals left. The idle players loved the TV series the most. Unlike the TV series, the games had riddles to solve and difficult levels, and people couldn't learn things if they were poor players. In the previous TV series, many people achieved breakthroughs by listening to the Tao lecture given by Patriarch Subodhi. Even the elves of the West Continent who couldn't learn stuff from the great sage had obtained lots of inspiration from the Tao lecture given by the Grand Master beyond the imagination of ordinary people. They were surprised that there was a new TV series. Besides the elves who had acute hearing, the saint-level masters were also eavesdropping. Hearing his words, they walked over and asked, "Sir, are the Tao lectures in it?" Mr. Fang rolled his eyes. "It's not released yet, how would I know?" Oh, okay. The saint-level masters who wanted to try to get some inside information replied, "Then, we'll go and watch the trailer." We'll watch the trailer. Soon, the Jua City shop, Xuanhuan City shop, and even the newly opened shops all received the news. The ancestral masters from the East Continent, Nalan Hongwu, and Gatinian had gone to the heavenly realm and didn't get this information. The trailer of the new TV series. At this moment, Su Tanji, who was live streaming the God of War and his illiterate and humiliating old father who has no sense of direction, had just killed a boss. "Hey, I'll go and watch the trailer of the new TV series, guys. You can watch the TV series when you have time. I'll return in 5 minutes. TV series?" Coming to watch Sutanji's live stream after watching Mr. Fang's, Valkyrie Isabella was displeased at the pause. "What's a TV series? What's so good about TV series? You'll waste 5 minutes of my time. Do you think I'm so idle?" At the second thought, she realized that she indeed had lots of time on her hands. Forget it, I will take a look at the so-called TV series trailer. Sutanji and the cultivators in different shops immediately turned on the new TV series in the Super Theater. As the poem goes, Panga separated Hundun first, which gave birth to Taikai containing yin and yang, which in turn derived the 4 symbols. The heavens were born at Z first hour, the earth was born at Chu second hour, and humans were born in yin, 3rd hour. And the saint named Yu Jiao taught people how to build shelters to hide from beasts. Sui Ren discovered fire so that people can cook raw food, and Fu Zai drew 8 trigrams and created the system of yin and yang. Shen Non tasted herbs to find medicines, and Xuan Yuan created the system of ceremonies and marriage. TL note, this poem is describing the events in Chinese mythology in order. On the screen, the heaven separated from the earth, the stars moved, and gods stood in rows as a golden list appeared between the heavens and earth. Immortals, gods, mortals, and ghosts are divided into their respective categories today and will thus not fall to the ground and become ignorant weeds. The supreme primeval Lord of Heaven commands gods from all directions to take part in the investiture. The booming voice seemed to come from heaven. It resonated in the world that Fang Chi was in like the huge bell ring when the heaven was separated from the earth. Then, they saw 4 big golden words lighting up as if they were supported by the gods and were bathed in radiant golden lights from prehistoric times. Investiture of the Gods. Chapter 899, Mr. Fang's Task. Investiture of the Gods. Right now, The players still had no idea what the 4 words represented, but an indescribable feeling rose in them as they saw the antique characters on the tablet and understood the meaning of the investiture of the gods. The scene turned to the top of Mount Chi where golden phoenixes sang in harmony. Vaguely, the players could see the extremely ingenious ancient array built by the troops dressed in battle armor. The wind and clouds swept backwards as the heavens and earth dimmed. The vast immortal palaces stood upon the stars and above the great Tao. Immortals bowed to a human dynasty. Major demons created catastrophes in the mortal world, and the gold list of the gods' investiture was born in accordance to the operation of the heavens and earth. The scenes flashed before them like a vast endless mythical scroll. 3 eyes. Is that Erlang immortal master? Jiangxi Oyu's eldest brother, Jiang Xuanhuan, especially liked Erlang immortal master. He exclaimed, "How come there's the Erlang immortal master here? Look, the kin, say, and pipa musical instruments, are they the 4 great heavenly kings?" Even the elves in the Kanglan city shop recognized some of the gods. "Ah, I seem to see Pagoda Beradi Varali." In the new shop at the East Continent, Jiangxi Oyu exclaimed as well, "Is this the heavenly court? Number? It looks like the mortal world." Shen Qingqing, a fan of plots, had obviously thoroughly studied the story. This is a human dynasty named Yinshang. How can it be? In Journey to the West, it was these immortals and gods who had built the immortal court which even the great sage, Heaven's equal, couldn't destroy. But now, these powerful immortals and gods were all officials working for a human dynasty. It flipped everything they knew about the world. Immortals, gods, and humans in the past 1,000 years upside down. How powerful is this dynasty? What had happened to cause such a huge transformation? Does this investiture of the gods tell the story about how the heavenly court was established and the backgrounds of the gods? These people were horrified by this thought. What kind of existences had the ability to establish the absolute order in the world where even the immortals and gods served as officials? Does that list of gods' investiture have something to do with all this? Greatly stunned and extremely curious, they wanted to continue watching this investiture of the gods. Sutanji yelled, "It is my highest recommendation. It's absolutely a miraculous TV series. It will be at least as good as The Journey to the West. I want to watch it, I want to watch it." Some elves almost jumped up from their seats. "Yeah, sir, we want to watch it. Aren't you watching it right now?" Mr. Fang said immediately. "What do you mean?" Elf Queen Kellybull walked over. "It's just a trailer. How much can you watch? We want to watch Investiture of the Gods." "It's not released yet," Mr. Fang said. "You can watch the trailer today. When the TV series is released, you can watch it then." With that said, Mr. Fang stood up to do his work. Thud. Elf Queen Kellybull put a hand on the wall and stopped Mr. Fang with others standing behind her. Then, when will it be released? At this moment, she saw a group of young elves standing behind her in support. She was proud that she finally regained some of her queenly dignity. "I'm not sure, maybe next month," Mr. Fang said casually. "Next month?" The Elf Queen raised her voice several pitches up. "Or the month after the next," Mr. Fang said. "The month after the next?" Kellybull's voice rose higher, attracting many people's attention. "Maybe 3 months later," Mr. Fang said. "Yeah, you." Kellybull's ears turned red with fury. "You're bullying us elves. Do you think you can do anything you want just because you're the shop owner?" Mr. Fang shrugged and walked away. "Humphrey, I'm furious." Kellybull stomped her foot and said, "This scummy shop owner, when Investiture of the Gods comes out, we'll boycott it. I'll see what he will say." Salah looked hesitant. "Sister Kelly, that's a bit unnecessary." Elder Sewell also looked torn as she said, "I think we'll still watch it." Before Kellybull could reply, an old figure behind her said in a low voice while stroking his silver beard, "This, Your Majesty, if you don't like it, you can read the important documents in the Elf Royal Palace. I can watch Investiture of the Gods for you. What do you think?" Dot. Dot. Of course, Mr. Fang wasn't sure about the release time since the task wasn't finished yet. At this moment, all he could think about was making money. For example, Nalan Hongwu and a few others had successfully entered Innumerable Immortal Sea. At this moment, the Innumerable Immortal Sea put all the energy into the mortal world and spared no attention to the things happening right under its nose. Can we build a teleportation array? It's impossible to build the array with materials from the mortal world. But we can solve the problem by acquiring materials from this world. Gatinian looked experienced as they walked through the market dressed in the same clothes as the immortals thronging on the streets. At this moment, two young masters dressed in luxurious robes walked over from the opposite direction. The useless servants are really. With so many powerful spiritual spells, they can't make some fun stuff for me to relieve boredom. Instead, they think of nothing but cultivation. Are they morons? Our major families enjoy prosperity for endless generations, and our patriarchs will never die. What's the use of cultivating hundreds and thousands of years? Aren't they stupid? Go, find some entertainment for us. A servant standing beside them said immediately, yes, young master. According to the legends, the gods living beyond the heaven obtained Tao in the distant past but lost fortune. No one knew what fortune was, but it drew the gods to this place. This place was the mortal world. Oh, King, Celestial Warrior has updated again. In the Geocity shop, Xuzixin saw an exquisitely made book on Shen King's desk. While flipping through it, she said, the contents in this book are unintelligible. What's it about? This book is about the previous events. I can't tell you the specifics since I haven't read it yet. Shen King watched the trailer of Investiture of the Gods again and obviously had no time for the book now. Meanwhile, in Innumerable Immortal Sea, the masters of great powers who were living as hermits in different places were summoned together. All immortals had assembled. Above the gods' palace, countless ancient gods who had ruled the heavens and earth for numerous years also assembled. If it were only to defend their dignity or the rules that they had made for humans, they wouldn't need to pay much attention. But the situation had changed. If that ultimate treasure came out, they would do anything for it, including sending an army from the godly court into the mortal world to shatter the whole mortal world into dust. Such huge forces were impossible for the humans to withstand. Even the most ancient gods would be shattered into dust by the forces from the whole world. What kind of force could block the gods in the whole world? Such force didn't exist. In fact, it was impossible for it to exist. Chapter 900, Arcade Hall in Innumerable Immortal Sea, BBK Learning Machine. In the Nameless Sea area in Innumerable Immortal Sea where Nalan Hongwu and the others ascended from the lower region Green Sky Immortal, the heavenly supervisor, gazed at the vast sea with squinted eyes. She seemed to be searching for something for a long time. Who are they? Perhaps some people ascended from the mortal world? It's not likely. The old Taoist standing beside Green Sky Immortal said, even we have to be cautious with those godly thunderbolts in the void. Without the purgation of the immortal spiritual essence, those mortals can't pass the vast void, let alone eluding our eyes. It's a hard journey to travel through the void. They would need to rest nearby for at least 1 month to recover their strength. But after searching for more than half a month, we haven't found a clue. Anyway, I'll report it to the higher levels before we make any decisions, Green Sky Immortal said cautiously with an unreadable expression. But the old Taoist said while feeling awkward, those lords are busy with an important issue. I'm afraid that they don't have time to mind such a trivial matter. Of course, they would never have thought that Nalan Hongwu and his companions hadn't even stayed at this place for half a minute, let alone half a month. At this moment, the group had come to the Thousand Lantern Immortal Market under the Saint Emperor Mountain. All kinds of items were being traded in this market. Since it was close to the major families, many young immortals from these ancient families would slip out and play in this immortal market. This thing is quite useful. At this moment, Xuanhuan and the others had left that sea area long ago and came to the market full of immortals. They had even bought the shop, which was said to be close to one of the 8 major families, even though they didn't know which one. The market before them was extremely prosperous. We sold 1 feather for 5,000 immortal crystals, which was an extremely low price in the black market, for only 2,000 immortal crystals. That shop owner handed us the deed of the shop in joy. Nalan Hongwu said, if sold in the regular market, the price would probably be as high as 100,000 immortal crystals, but they didn't recognize its value. We'd be finished if they recognized its value. Xuanhuan chuckled. The white feather in his hand was one of the feathers from the Valkyrie's wings. Things had gone much smoother than they had expected. After selling 1 feather for a high price on the black market, the money talked, which made the purchase of that shop a piece of cake. As he put away the feather in his storage spiritual artifact, the others took out things from their storage spiritual artifact and put up the new sign over the shop. Then, they heard people talking outside the door. Did you hear? The 8 ancient immortal families are holding a banquet on the Immortal Investiture platform to welcome heroes and immortals from all places. They are recruiting immortals to subdue the evil and unorthodox gods who are deluding the mortal world. Anyone with some abilities will be rewarded if they are willing to go down to the lower region and kill the demons. Really? Coming out of a shop selling immortal treasures, 3 weirdly dressed immortal cultivators talked among themselves. Should us, the Cloud Dream 3 eccentrics, go and try our luck? One of the 3 men wore ragged clothes like a beggar, one was tall and thin with vertical eyes, and the last was as brawny as a bull and had 2 horns on his head. Nalan Hongwu and Xuanhuan exchanged a look and walked up calmly before asking, Taoist friend, you said something about the mortal world, anything big happening lately? You two are new here. The 3 men looked Nalan Hongwu and Xuanhuan up and down cautiously. They saw that one of them was slightly hunchbacked but looked heroic and extraordinary with white hair and a white robe, and the other looked celestial and grander than an ordinary immortal. Seeing their suspicion, Nalan Hongwu and Xuanhuan cupped hands, saying, we're from the new shop. The High Immortal Arcade Game Hall, which is next door. What hall? Cloud Dream 3 eccentrics thought that they had heard it wrong and gazed at the celestial old men in stupefaction. Following the direction that the 2 men pointed, they saw the sign over the shop next door. High Immortal Arcade Game Hall? ? What is that? Taoist friend, you haven't told us about the big events happening in the mortal world. Xuanhuan immediately reminded him. Oh, no problem. Seeing that they were not people of suspicious origins, the tall and thin immortal said, in fact, it's not a secret. It's said that the demons in the mortal world are so outrageous that they occupy the immortal factions and godly nations in the mortal world and even used tricks to defeat the immortals who went to fight them. Therefore, the major immortal families are gathering immortals from different families and places to wage a war against them in the lower region. It's said. He pointed at the west and said in a low voice, those people over there will join this time. What kind of demons are so outrageous? Nalan Hongwu said immediately, it's a pity that we can't leave our shop, otherwise, we can join the army and fight them. We share the same purpose. Cloud Dream 3 eccentrics was reassured when they found that their new friends shared the same hatred for the demons in the mortal world as them. By the way, pointing at the shop behind him, the immortal looked at it curiously and asked, Taoist friends, what business does your hall do? As he said that, a few people walked over while being led by a white-robed, arrogant young master. Walking before him, the servant-looking young man demanded, what business does your shop do? Arcade Game Hall, what's that? They looked at the shop with curiosity. The shop hadn't begun its business yet but was well decorated with 2 rows of artifacts standing neatly in the small space. Close to the entrance was a rectangle artifact which showed an environment as colorful as the bottom of the innumerable immortal sea with all kinds of rare fishes swimming in it. They even saw a huge weird fish with fins large enough to block the sun flashing by. It revealed a small part of its body in the deep ocean. In other artifacts beside it, there were small figures casting all kinds of spiritual spells which created powerful thunderbolts or surging ocean waves. There were also all kinds of gods, immortals, and monsters named Marshal Tempeng and the Great Sage, Heaven's Equal. The scenes were dizzying to watch. Several tall artifacts stood in the innermost location of the shop. There were arrows dropping onto a small platform with a 3x3 grid. Is this spiritual platform showing an array? Cloud Dream 3 Eccentrics pointed at the pad and asked. Dazed friend, you have sharp eyes. This is called the Nine Palace Array, Xuanhuan introduced with a laugh. Nine Palace Array? What array is that? We've never heard of it before, the white-robed young master said in disdain. While stroking his beard, Xuanhuan said with a smile, it divides the heavenly palace into 9 equal parts which are Qian, Kan, Zhen, Zhen, Zong, Xun, Li, Kun, and Dui. They move according to the movements of the stars in the sky. It's an array and also a set of movement techniques at the same time. Pointing at the arrows falling in the screen of the special spiritual artifact, he said, when you step on the 9 palace array according to the order of the arrows falling on the screen, you can use the movement technique taught by the spiritual artifact. Their eyes instantly lit up. What's this spiritual artifact called? Can we try it? This is called Dunk. Before Xuanhuan could complete the word dance and say the next word bad, Gatinian interrupted and said with great solemnity and presence, this is called the BBK Learning Machine. TL note, BBK Learning Machines are iPad-like tablets that BBK Company created just for kids and elementary schoolers to learn stuff in China. They ran a ton of ads and became a meme-like company.